In this activity, you're going to learn a couple of different things. You're going to learn first about the ActiveInspire window and then the world that that window looks through. When I talk about that, I'm talking about like if you think about your iPad or your iPhone or your phone in general, if you swipe to the left or right, you know that there's apps that may reside off of the screen. You just need to bring them onto the screen. ActiveInspire can provide that same functionality. You just need to know how to set it up. Secondly, we're going to talk about how you can group objects together so that they become one big object. We're going to talk about the property browser as well as the object browser. We're going to talk a little bit about layering in this particular one. And then finally, we're going to talk about the restricting movement of an object. If we don't want an object to move up or down, we only want it to move horizontally, we can go about doing that, or vice versa if we so desire. So those are the things that we're going to learn about in this particular activity. So the first thing we want to talk about is right here, Tiger Facts. All right, you can see this is a lot of information. We've all been in presentations where somebody is reading a PowerPoint to us, and oftentimes they're not the most stimulating of events in our lives. But there's better ways to present this information. So you can see right here, you have eyes of the tiger. Tigers are round pupils with yellow irises, except for the blue tigers, which have the blue eyes of the white tigers. Um, if I wanted to show that in a better representation where people are more likely to remember that information, what I can actually do is I can incorporate the uses of images while I'm talking. And if I scroll over, you will see right here, I have a tiger, and you can actually see his yellow irises and his pupils are round. And if I scroll, I can show you the white tigers have blue eyes instead of yellow. So people are more likely to remember this than as opposed to a bunch of text. But what we want to learn how to do is how to set it up so we can just have pictures scroll in like this. On slide 4 of 4, right up here in the top corner, I have all of the information and all of the objects you would need to build this particular slide, but we don't see it all. And that's because we haven't zoomed out far enough to look at our world. To zoom out, what we're going to do is go up in the top right hand corner and click where it says best fit, and we're going to zoom out to 25%. And once we zoom out to 25%, you can see here's our window and this is our world, all the stuff that we can then drag into our window if we so desire. Anytime that you start dealing with some of the more advanced functions like restrictors and things like that, you're going to want to be in design mode. The way you get into design mode is you simply turn on this little button right here and it'll turn red. Now, one thing to note, when you are in design mode, the restrictors are not going to work. It means you're going to be able to move things around freely. So just be mindful of which mode you're in, if you're in design mode or presentation mode. All right. So the first thing we have to do, we have our little time strip right here that we'd like to drag on there. And you notice that some of the things are not actually on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag all of these pictures down to this strip. We'll group them together and then place them where we want so that they can slide across here. So we know that the first image that I have to drag over is a Siberian tiger. Well, I go to click and drag and oh, uh-oh. Well, why is it doing that? Well, it's because it's on different layers. If I go to my object browser right here and I click on image right here, image 2, you'll see that I have image 2 selected, and the horizon right here is this time strip. So I need to take this picture of the tiger and put it above the horizon. Now there's a couple different ways I can do that. One, I can simply click on image 2 and drag it up to the spot where I want it and let it go. And now you'll see, as long as it is above horizon, I have the ability to place it and place it over top of this. So the next thing I'm going to do is drag my Sumatran tiger down here like this. And then the eyes. And then the white tiger. And maybe I want to space some of these things out so they look a little more in line. Something like that, although it's not perfect. I could be sitting here all day doing that. So the next step is actually I have to group all these objects together and make them one big object. I could click on each individual object and hold down my control key and select them all. But there's an easier way to go about doing it. what I would always do is tell you to use a lasso tool. What you're going to do is you're simply going to just simply left click, click, and drag, and you'll create a box and drag that box over everything that you want to group. Now I have them all selected. Be mindful that don't put your box up here and go like this, because now you can possibly select items that are in here that you might not want. So if I click that like that, you can see the big box. I don't want all those. I only want these objects. So when you make your lasso, be mindful that you're only grabbing the objects that you wish to make into one big object. So once I have them all selected, what I'm going to do is simply click on the next to the translucency slider, which if you don't know what that is, it's a nice little tool where you can hide things rather easily just by using the translucency slider. What I want to do is actually group these objects together. To group them together, to the right of the translucency slider is the grouped button. If I simply click on that, it'll turn yellow, and now all of these objects are just one big object. I can move them around rather easily. So what I'm going to do is simply place them in the way that I want them to look. So now I have it in the right area, it looks okay. So now what I need to do is set this object so it is restricted and only moves horizontally. To do that, I'm going to go to my property browser. One thing to always note is make sure that you have the object selected, because you'll see that I have restrictors right here, but if I don't have an object selected, I don't have restrictors. So oftentimes that's a little bit confusing. If you don't have restrictors showing up there, make sure that you select your object, and then you should have restrictors. I'm going to expand the restrictors menu and scroll down a little bit. Now this particular object, we don't want it to be able to move freely. We want it to be able to move horizontally. So if I click on horizontal, now this object can only move horizontally. So let's see if it works. So I'm going to just click and drag up and see if it works. Whoa, wait a second, something happened. Why is that? Well, I know that I set it up properly, but as I said at the beginning of this video, whenever you're testing something to make sure it's working, make sure that you're not in design mode. So I'm going to go up and turn design mode off, and now look at that. I can't move it up or down. Now if I set my view back to best fit, now we can drag things in, and you can see you've just built this slide rather easily. So that's how you can go about presenting information in a little bit more visual of a manner while taking advantage of the window on the world and the use of restrictors and grouping.